There are imminent gun bans happening in Canada right now, and those same exact style of bans are coming to the United States, whether you like it or not. And understand that this information I'm about to give you should both concern you and piss you off at the same time. Now, Bill C-21 was introduced in Canada as mainly a way to ban handgun ownership. Now, of course, there's always other things attached to bills, but at the end of the day, the goal there was to ban handguns in Canada. Now, that bill has since been amended to include semi-automatic long guns, including the Tavor X95, Ruger PC carbine, the Benelli M4 shotgun, all the AR-180 variants, Crusader Arms products, and the venerable SKS. Now understand, there's an estimated 200,000 SKS owners in Canada. So keep that in mind, Canada, because there's 200,000 of you that have SKSs, and this affects you, and you might have to decide whether or not you're going to comply. Now, keep in mind that the Canadian mainstream media, and of course the United States mainstream media in a very similar fashion, often paints this whole situation as a problem for hunters, right? Oh, the hunters are being targeted, and this hurts hunting heritage and everything else related to that. This isn't about hunting, and we need to drop this whole hunter thing when it comes to firearms rights. I don't care about the ability to go out and hunt when it comes to these specific types of firearms. This is for self-defense, this is for self-preservation, and this is for people to protect themselves from the existential threat of tyrannical overreach, which is continually happening every single day in every modernized country. And that's exactly why they're taking these away. It's not so they can impede on your ability to go out and hunt Bambi. This is so they can tell you no to things that you know you should be able to say yes to without you being able to put up a fight. So keep that in mind. Let's get rid of this whole sporterized concept and this whole hunterized concept when it comes to firearms rights. None of that matters. What matters is you should be allowed to own what you need in order to defend yourself properly from the threats that currently exist. Now understand that these governments have created this environment that makes people like you and I feel we need these types of weapons in order to protect ourselves because their policies have failed and they've created a dangerous, crime-ridden environment where the average person is more in danger every single day rather than being protected by the government whose job it supposedly was to protect you. And yet with defunding police and with trying to make criminals less criminal every single day and releasing people onto the streets and everything else related to the failures of what's happening right now, they're still telling you that you shouldn't have the best ability to protect yourself, even though their failures are creating that dangerous environment. Now understand, Trudeau, who obviously doesn't think he can do anything wrong, has recently stated that he didn't feel he mishandled the Freedom Convoy situation at all. And in fact, his words, quote unquote, about the truckers involved with the Freedom Convoy were that they wanted to be obeyed. Now, I disagree with that because I don't think they wanted to be obeyed. Now, this applies to firearms ownership and everything else as well. And this is how these elites actually think about you and me. They didn't want to be obeyed. They wanted to be left alone. That's exactly what gun owners want, and that's exactly what the truckers wanted when it came to the Freedom Convoy. Leave us alone to make our own decisions when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And that's all we're asking for, is to be left alone. We are not the problem here. The problem is the government and their failed policies and the criminals who are willing to do whatever they want regardless of what the government says. We fit in between, and for some reason, we're always the ones being targeted with government overreach, even though we're not the ones creating these problems. So they want it to be left alone, and we want to be left alone as well, to make the decisions that we should be able to make when it comes to our own self-preservation, regardless of whether or not that comes down to self-defense or if it comes down to healthcare choices. Now, here's the other thing you have to understand. This semi-auto long gun ban that Canada is pushing right now and has inserted into this bill C-21 that, like I said, was originally to ban handguns, well, this same exact type of talk is being pushed right now in the United States Senate. And this should concern you because they're going to try their best to do this to us, and it's going to be up to us to make this choice. You're going to have to make a choice. Are you going to comply? Are you going to deal with this ridiculousness that's occurring right now within our own country? And are you going to suffer in the sense of how you're going to be able to protect yourself from the people who won't care anyway when it comes to these laws and everything else being passed, right? Understand that they're pushing the similar semi-auto ban in the Senate right now, and they're sneaking it in through backdoor ways if they can. They're attaching it to bills that have to do with same-sex marriage and things like that, instead of actually coming out in front and center and telling you exactly what they're trying to do, because they know it's not a popular idea, especially now, post-2020, when millions of Americans who never thought they needed to own something like an AR-15 decided to go out and actually purchase that because they were concerned. And what Canada's trying to do, and what the United States is going to try to do, is chip away at every right you have. And eventually they'll be moving more and more towards complete firearms bans. And that's exactly what they want. Now understand, with the legislation that Canada is trying to push right now, they want you to be relegated to only having something like this. This is a single shot rifle, right? One shot is all you get. And that's all you need, right? Because you're a hunter and it has nothing to do with self-preservation or self-defense. It has everything to do with hunting. Now, I like this gun quite a bit. It's a nice little single-shot rifle, but it is not all I want, and it's definitely not set up for self-defense and preserving life and liberty and everything else, right? This is specifically for being a lightweight hunting package, and that is it. So this has nothing to do with this being enough. This is not enough for self-defense, and I do not want to rely on this type of platform in order to do any of that in the future. Now, Biden recently said that allowing the purchase of semi-automatic weapons is sick, okay? I think that's ridiculous. What a stupid thing to say. Semi-automatic weapons have been part of American culture for over a century, and they've been involved in wars like World War I, which was over 100 years ago. And yet now semi-automatic weapons are a problem. This has nothing to do with safety or protection. This has everything to do with protecting themselves. Understand that when you have rogue agencies like the ATF trying to ban pistol braces and trying to turn you and I into felons overnight, that they are concerned about how people are going to react to it. They don't want us to have the ability to tell them no. They don't want us to have the ability to possibly enforce our will of the people upon them if we finally get to the point where we can no longer deal with their crap. And that's exactly what they're trying to avoid by taking things away one step at a time. And when it comes to rogue agencies like the ATF trying to criminalize us and banning things like pistol braces and everything else, which are all part of this overarching imminent ban that's happening all over the place right this second, well, understand that the ATF is also engaged in active training for encounters with armed people, thanks to a video put out by Fox 2 Detroit. Now understand that, of course, the ATF has to deal with armed people on a regular basis whenever they're out enforcing the law. Of course, you can argue whatever you want about that. But with the current situation happening right now, with all the current laws on the books, and with all of the different things we've seen in the sense of ATF agent interactions and everything else going on in the world, we have to understand that these types of training regiments are often in place because they're concerned about these door-to-door visits where they're going to find out whether or not you have what it is they already know you have. And the fact is that they're approaching homes of people that they know are already armed, and they're training in order to handle it in the best way possible because they know what they're going to have to do here in the relatively near future. And the other thing you need to keep in mind is that these people that are in law enforcement and in the military and all of these different branches of government have all taken constitutional oaths. Okay, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them have, and these constitutional oaths are being broken every single time they enforce unconstitutional laws. So it's up to these law enforcement agencies, it's up to these politicians, it's up to these bureaucrats to stop enforcing things that they know are blatantly illegal, and yet they're not going to. So it's going to be up to you. What are you going to decide to do? What choices are you going to make? Are you going to let the government dictate to you what you need to be able to have access to in order to protect you and your family, especially during some type of emergency crisis scenario, which is where we are headed? For some reason, it's okay to let criminals out on bail early. It's okay to not enforce the current laws on the books. It's okay to subject the American people to ridiculous amounts of inflation and create a situation of desperation that moves those people into criminal activity. And it's okay to give the Taliban billions of dollars of militarized equipment that you and I don't have access to, while also sending billions of dollars overseas to a conflict in order to give them access to billions of dollars of military equipment, while telling you and I that there's nothing to be concerned about, there's nothing we should be worried about to the degree that we wouldn't need these weapons, when what we're seeing happening all around the world right now is an escalation towards world conflict. So you tell me what choices you're going to have to make. But I think we all know that we, as the American people, are going to experience what's happening in Canada at some point in time if we allow that to happen. And we have to choose right now whether or not we're going to move forward in the same vein that they're trying to push everybody else into. So this conversation needed to happen because these things just keep happening no matter what. And there's great coalitions, and there's a Firearms Policy Coalition, there's Gun Owners of America, there's a lot of good legal entities out there that are trying to take the fight to the courts where we can hopefully get some of this back. But this is what they're trying to do to us. We have to understand that it's their fault that we even have to put ourselves in this position to begin with. And now we're at a situation where you're going to have to decide at some point in time what it is that you're willing to deal with.